see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face.
Oh, I'm from Brooklyn.
Hey, guess any.
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
What's up, everybody? It's another episode of Coast to Coast. I am your host, Pags. We've got Bo there. He's not in the middle because there's only two of us right now. McLovin will be in shortly. Good morning, Bo. How are you?
Doing good, man. How about you? Feeling a little better after being a day removed?
No, I haven't. Actually, it's the hardest part about being in this position. Obviously, is that everybody wants to know if they're a fan, they want my opinion in terms of, what happens now. If they're a hater, they do the what happens because they ain't got nothing else. They gotta repeat something that some kid said, 3 years ago, and they don't have any real brain function of their own. Truth of the matter is that I'm still very frustrated about how this all occurred. You know what I mean? It's
and you should be.
I feel like this is. See, that's what I thought. It wasn't. I knew that. I knew he wasn't ready. All right, let's get to the news. Before I get into how I feel, let's get into some of the news that I saw today.
Sure.
The Browns fired Van Pelt, and they're doing a whole big staff overhaul. So the offensive coordinator from it's actually as of 30 minutes ago.
Oh, okay.
They dismissed Van Pelt. Got to imagine they're going to keep the defensive coordinator. However, how do you go all season long so great and then have that lay that big of an egg in the playoffs?
I mean, when you're throwing 2 pick sixes, I think that kind of takes the wind out of the sails, especially on back-to-back drives, right? I mean, I don't care how good of a defense you are. If your quarterback goes out, takes the ball, pick six, comes back out, takes the ball, pick six, it feels pretty out of reach at that point. I think in that scenario, even if you're an elite defense and you're down at that point by, what was it? It was 28 or something. Like at some point you're like, you know what? We probably don't got this today.
Right.
So, I mean, I can't really fault the defense too much on that. 14 points were they weren't even on the field.
Understood on that. The Falcons interview John Harbaugh.
Yeah, them and the Chargers. They both got it in early this week. So it'd be interesting to see what kind of offers come out of that. Generally, those get become public anyway. So curious to see what it is. I remember what Michigan was offering 125 for 10, right? 10 years, I think it was.
I thought it was like 15 million a year. I thought. So I thought it was 150. Might have been even higher. So I don't know. Yeah.
No, I mean it could have been that. I think the first number I heard was 125, but it could have escalated to 150, something like that for sure. So I'm curious what these NFL teams are going to be willing to part with. Because I mean, essentially that would make him the highest paid coach in the league, right?
Ever.
Yeah.
Any coach ever.
Yeah.
So I know that they also did Bill Belichick.
Yes.
Belichick also interviewed with them. So I think that they're doing a full due diligence. They're going to have to interview somebody of different nationality.
Yeah, the minority. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, they got to do the minority stuff, but
I feel like that team they can afford to kind of do what was the Colts, where they interviewed everybody 100 times. It seemed like they interviewed an insane amount of people, which is kind of uncharacteristic. So it wouldn't surprise me if Atlanta kind of went that route and really kind of explored everything, because they have a decent defense. They have kind of a terrible division. They have a good enough draft pick to get one of these quarterbacks. I think they're eighth or 10th, something like that. So they can get one of these quarterbacks. They have some nice weapons. So they have a platform that's very buildable. Belichick doesn't make a ton of sense to me, just because they're going to have a younger team. They have something they can build for the future on. And let's be honest, Bill is his next contract's going to be 3 to 5 years. And then that's probably it, right? Like at that point, he's probably hanging it up. He's going to be almost 80 at the end of that. So if you're looking for like a long-term, have a coach for, 5-10 years, a guy like Belichick probably isn't it. I could see them maybe going after Vrabel, although weirdly, I haven't heard anybody asking for that interview yet, which is strange.
No, I agree. I thought that was a little odd myself. I wonder why.
That one doesn't make sense. Like, all he did was win and then make the best of a horrible situation, right? No real cap room, no real talent, aging talent that is there. The GM kind of set him up for failure, and he still got them guys out battling. Like, how do you not want that guy in your room?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that the players can actually relate to him.
Sure.
And I'm a firm believer on how players listen more to coaches that have been where they are. I firmly believe that. I mean, that's why I feel like that with the Rams, there's always the air of, I think I might retire. I won't come back. You know what I mean? That there's a lack of certain respect for McVay because he didn't play.
Yeah,
You know what
I mean, it's funny though, because the dude can coach, right? Like, I mean, all they do is win. Like, even when they shouldn't win, they win. So, I mean, they didn't last year, but they also didn't have a starting offensive line the entire season. So,
offensive line, no quarterback. Donald was hurt. I mean, anybody who was on that team wound up being hurt. But
yeah,
I mean, I don't like somebody who's that flighty either. Like, he was just flighty. He's like, yeah, I might retire. I think I'm going to stay.
I don't love that, because then your players never really know where they stand either, right? They're like, are you leaving? Are you here? Are we having to learn something new? Am I getting cut because now you're gone? Like, there's so much uncertainty. I don't love anybody that's wishy-washy in that way. Plus, that's got to make it harder for the team to acquire talent, right? It's like, oh yeah, come to LA. We may have a coach, we may not. It's like, yeah, maybe that's not the deal I take. Maybe I get the same money somewhere else. I'm taking that because I at least know what I'm getting into.
Right. So there's just, I don't know. Interesting. Anyways, let's go with a lot of stuff on Kelsey announcing retirement.
It's funny because on his podcast, he was saying he didn't officially announce. This is just what's leaked out. He said he wasn't equipped to make that decision at the end of that game, how emotional that game was, which makes total sense to me. Ultimately, I do think he retires, but I get what he's saying for sure.
So being a little closer to it,
sure,
and no, I don't. I've spoken to Kelsey a few times. He knows who I am. I wear his pants. I literally, they're his pants that I wear when I get dressed up in my Eagles uniform. That being said, I know he's ready to become a dad.
Sure.
He's got 3 beautiful girls, and such like that. But he also needs to remain active. He's an active guy. So could he go up into the booth? I'm sure. The fact that there isn't that offer standing right there, or there may be that we don't know about. I mean, but that's really his business, not anybody else's. I feel like he's ready to become a dad, but his daughters aren't ready to have him be the dad. Like they're not playing sports yet. They're still too young. You know what I
Sure.
mean? And I feel like that's what he wants. He wants to be able to engross himself in his family. He's a very family oriented guy, as you could
Yep.
tell from the podcast. As you could tell, listen, if it wasn't for Jason Kelsey, Travis probably wouldn't be in the league. You would never
Oh,
have
no
even
doubt.
heard of the Kelseys whatsoever. They wouldn't have the best podcast in the country and possibly the world right now.
Sure.
Um, Travis wouldn't have a girlfriend, or at least it wouldn't be Taylor Swift.
Sure. Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So, and not only that, all the money that was raised for charity through this guy, you know what I mean, is just along with having the most iconic speech ever in the history of anybody winning a championship.
Yep.
You know, it's like that speech will live in infamy. You know, or not infamy, but it will live famously, really, because
Absolutely.
like he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Now,
No doubt.
this is where I get into the Jason Peters part of this. Players always seem to stay 2 years too long. And I feel that you're given that. You give the 2 years too long and still
Yeah.
make it a first ballot.
Sure.
It's when you stay 4 years too long, you start losing your first ballot status. That's where Jason Peters falls in.
Yeah.
So
You start putting too much bad tape out there.
I feel like next year, if you ask Jason Kelsey for an honest opinion on what his season was like this year, personally,
Yep.
I'd be willing to bet that he would say that he had a down year. You know, he had certain calls that he never got called for before. He had certain things that, just, some holding calls that he wasn't able to get out there fast enough and stuff like that. And I could believe that the body is starting to break down a little bit. You know what I mean? That
Absolutely.
that's what's occurring. Uh, that all being said, he's still at an all-pro year. Still is one of the best centers out there, even with all the mistakes that he made this year.
Yeah, easily. I mean, and some of it may factor in with the whole tush push thing, just because he says it is a brutal play, and they run it a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
so that may also factor into it. Like, do I have that in me all year of just getting one of the most athletic plays he has to do, one that he says he gets banged up on doing? Does he want to keep doing that thing? And I don't know if he does. I don't know if I would want to after, coming to the end of your career and having one of the more brutal plays be ran,
Excuse me.
4 or 5 times a game. Bless you.
Right. Thank you. So, yeah, I mean, I get it. I understand. I think he comes back. I really believe he comes back. When I saw him walk off I never believed that this was his last year. I thought that
Sure.
the only way it was his last year is if he won a Super Bowl. He would go out on top. And that made sense to me.
It was the
Anything
way he
short
left
of
the
that.
field. It was the way he left the field that made me think it could actually could be a real thing. Because the way he left was so different than the rest of his team. And maybe that was just because they seemed indifferent to the whole process. But he seemed like he was walking off the last time, as emotional as he was, right? Because that's usually what you see out of that. It's like, oh, they know they're hanging it up. He did kind of allude to it before the game anyway, right? The day before or 2 days before, whatever it was. And so, giving credibility to the possibility anyway. And, so the way he walked off, you're like, I mean, that could have been it. That could have been it. And then, leave it up to Shefty to, jump the gun and put some bad information out there.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that I don't think Shifty put bad information out there. I think that he saw exactly what everybody else saw.
Yeah.
Going by what he was saying before, I wouldn't have been surprised if if Jason said after the end of that game, I'm done. I'm just done. I'm done. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then thinking about it, and then taking the night to think about it and talking to his wife and, getting hugs from his children. His children only know him as a football player.
Sure.
When your kids know that like that and you see that all the time like that, they don't know any different. You know what I mean? So they are actually they're don't worry, Daddy, there's next year. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that may have been something that came out of his daughter's mouth, and that resonates too highly with
Sure.
father.
Especially with him. Yeah.
It's like, hey, I'm a competitive guy, and my daughter just said that, hey, she wants to go back to the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? So it's like, how do you,
Yeah.
I have to explain to my daughter that I can't take her to the Super Bowl this year, where I promised her I would take her. I said, but we got to get there first, obviously. I'm not
Yeah.
going to the Super Bowl now. Thank God, because it was going to be
Well, the
way
last thing he wants is his daughters to be like, I didn't want Uncle Travie to win yet again.
right. And I don't think they have to worry about that at all. But
Yeah, me either.
but that's what we're talking about here. I kind of believe that he got an awakening on this. Like it was just like, hey, we are not done yet. I'm just not done yet. I have a little more, and I firmly believe that next year would be the first of the 2 years too long. I think he'd still be a great player. You know what I mean? Still a Hall of Fame
Sure.
player. But I think that it would be the first year of the 2 years too long, and he won't go the second year of 2 years too long. He just won't. He's
No,
got too
he would.
much pride in himself.
Yeah. No,
But
if
I
he has a
think
bad year, he's probably hanging it up.
right.
Either he
I
wins it all or he has a significant drop off, and then you're just like, yeah, fair enough.
right. Yeah, and I think if he had a significant drop off, he'd retire in the middle of the season. Like I
I
think
mean,
that
it's possible.
if he couldn't do it, he would stop. It would just be literally like, okay, no, I'm done. I'm done. This is too much.
I gave it a
But
go, and it ain't happening. Yeah, no, I mean that's fair. That's fair.
yeah, see, everybody's starting to get the thing about that, like what happened and what's going on in the locker room. Yes, there is something going on in the locker room. I'm not at liberty to say yet because I do not have it official. And I can't because I don't have it official. It's all hearsay. I am not
Yeah,
going to report hearsay. I
yeah,
will not do it. So I alluded to the fact that there were some rumors swirling around this team right now. I will not report what I know at this
no,
point.
I mean when it
Not
comes to
yet. Not
reporting,
yet.
I don't care about being first. I want to be right. Right? Like I don't want to
Right.
put out bad
That's
information.
100%.
Yeah.
And trust me, if I found out, if I had it confirmed, you better believe I don't care. I would be the first one to report it. If
Sure.
I knew it for a fact, I would report it. No doubt in my mind. I would let everybody know because we deserve to know. We
Sure.
as fans deserve to know what happened and what's going on and why this is so why this year went so awry so quickly.
Yeah.
So you're curious what could cause this whole meltdown? If you heard what I heard, you'd understand.
Yeah.
So think about things in the most egregious sense of what men could do to other men. Now, I'm not talking about we're not in jail here. You know what I mean? So let's not go that route. Just so that I know how that came out. You know what I mean? I wanted to
Yeah,
make
yeah.
sure.
Well, I mean, in that scenario, it would lend itself to the Golden Tate Russell Wilson was never founded, but those rumors swirled around, and Tate ended up out of town in Detroit, and that one was weird because Wilson never came out and like defended him, which was weird.
Again, I don't even know about that, and to be honest, I don't want to know.
Yeah,
I really
well,
don't want to know.
similar road, I think.
Yeah, that could be. That could be. Anyways, a couple of other things that have occurred beyond the fact that I think Kelsey will be back next year. Just my honest opinion, right this very second. That could change over time, obviously. But
Sure.
I think right now he will be back. Uh, the Commanders' new GM says this is not a total rebuild. What?
What do
What?
they keep in place? Like, if there was ever a total rebuild, this is it, because they also changed owners. Like, you can't change more pieces than what it is they're going to change. They're going to change most of the roster. They're going to change all the coaches. They're changing the GM. They're changing the owners. Like, how much more of a rebuild can you be?
Well, you're going to keep the two defensive linemen that you have. You got the one wide receiver that you've got. You've probably got a good backup quarterback with Howell. You know what I mean? If
Okay.
you wanted to even keep with him one more, but you got the second pick in the draft. Why wouldn't you use that for a quarterback? Let's be for real. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So my expectation is odd that it's like that,
It,
but
it, that's a
we'll
weird
see. I mean,
phrase.
obviously, he may be trying to. I believe that there are a few cornerstone pieces on this roster. I believe that there's a lot of work to do. It's an ongoing process. They've started a little bit, but we have a lot of work to do. That was
Oh,
his
so he's
stance.
saying it's not a total rebuild because you're keeping four guys. Like, that's not a real thing.
Right. So,
Like, that sounds
and
like a rebuild.
they have 75 million in cap space.
Okay.
It's a lot of cap space.
That
And the
is
second pick in the draft. So
Yeah, I mean, you would think you would go get a quarterback with that, because Howell doesn't look like he's the guy. So why wouldn't you pick up one of the better QBs in the draft? And you could even trade back off of that second pick and still get one of the better guys, right? I mean, fortunately for them, it's a pretty quarterback heavy draft, unless maybe they were. Do they have a second first round pick, or do they just have the one?
just the one.
I don't just the one, because I was going to say, you could also potentially try and go get like a Marvin Harrison Jr. or something like that, add a weapon immediately, and then get with a second round pick, maybe get a Bo Nix or something. I mean,
Maybe.
you could still.
I don't know. I wide receivers aren't their problem. Again, and I understand that Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be a beast at some point to some franchise, and my expectation is that they're probably going to wind up seeing him in either Arizona or there's something tells me that Chicago is going to stay with Fields. Something tells me about that. I just don't know. You got to imagine that like they're keeping that very hush hush, but I think they keep that number one pick and trade it back to like number 4, which I think is that the Patriots or maybe even Arizona.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly. Well, so on the Bears front, let me ask you this question then. So Eberflus is the only one that keeps his job somehow, right? And so if he keeps Fields and Fields doesn't show progress this next season, fired, right? Pretty easy. So, but if he goes and gets someone else, he might buy himself an extra year if they move off of Fields, right? Because they could have went and got a guy this last year, and we've seen some of these rookies ball out, and Fields didn't look great. Now, granted, no parts of that team looked great, so it doesn't solely fall on Fields. But if you are Eberflus and you're trying to keep your job, you haven't necessarily shown a lot of faith in Fields based on, play calling in general. Do you really stick with him? I mean, it seems like just in self-preservation, you might move on.
See, this is where I would, me personally, live by the sword, die by the sword. Now, if Eberflus was the reason, like he was the one who brought in these coordinators, and these coordinators didn't do their job, and he had to fire them. Like, did the firing come from him, or did it come from above? If it came from above,
Up top,
yeah. If that's the case, then he's a puppet, anyways. Eberflus is a puppet.
Sure.
So ultimately, they're going to just say, okay, you're the one you're the delegator of the duties, but we're going to put the people in the place to do the duties. So
Well, I
all
mean,
he is the puppet of the GM.
but if that's the case, then why would you even keep him in there, right? Because I mean, at that point, you might as well get an actual coach, because it's not like there was impeccable like clock management and stuff that the head coach has to do throughout the season either. So it's not like you kept him because he was good at that part of the job. I mean, they really did nothing well. So if you're going to fire everyone anyway, why not just flush it all and let your new, coach come in and pick the guy they want, rather than wait for this quality quarterback draft to pass you and then not have any options. It seems like a weird scenario, but then it's the Bears, and so then it's not as weird as it seems. But it seems like a mishandling of a potential first round pick for the second year in a row.
Yeah, and the fact that they have two of them makes it uh, more interesting. You know what I mean? Because they've got the number 1 and the number 10 pick, I think is what it is. And ultimately, if they trade back, I mean, that's the reason why I would trade. I would make the trade back because you could probably get 2 or 3 more first round draft picks for that number 1 pick, depending on where you're picking at. You know what I mean? So think about somebody who's at like 8 or 9. So, you think about that where you could have 2 picks in a row, number 9 and number 10 pick.
Yeah.
So it's like, and that team's first round pick next year and that first round pick the following year. You know what I mean? Because then ultimately,
and you could still do that and go get a quarterback, right? Because you could end up with Penix at that depth, right? And so say you also traded Fields and you get a second and a 6th and maybe a conditional 3rd or 2nd the following year, right? Because you could probably get some package like that for Fields. You're getting really close to the end of his rookie deal, right? So you're going to have to pay him. You still don't know if he's the guy. So if you did move off him, you could still trade back off that first pick because of how deep this quarterback draft is, get a quality guy in there, end up with a bunch of picks from him, a bunch of picks from trading back. You can address that offensive line. You can address that defense. Like, you could actually do a lot of things in this draft by still getting a quarterback because of what you'd get for him. And then, moving back off the first one, which I think, they could feasibly do. And yeah, I mean, all of a sudden you could address a lot of needs that team has.
I'm also a big fan of their backup quarterback. Tyson Bagent showed that he could play in this league. Now, again, he had a little bit of issues with the offensive line, and he did throw some picks and stuff like that, but he balled out. For an undrafted rookie, he balled out some. And I kind of still like the fact that I would like for him to try to compete. He's got to he's got to go to do the big off-season workout camps. Like, he'd have to go do those weirdo camps that those quarterbacks have to do, or that they should go do. Like the adults, hey, you're going to go work with me as your guy. You know what I mean? And I think that would absolutely, because I think that he is an NFL quarterback. And I touted him. I touted him in the combine. I would have loved to see him get drafted. He broke all those records in Division II. And I think that there is a spot for him somewhere. He's got to get polished more. Right now, he's rough, very rough and rugged. You know what I mean? So he's got to go through the ringer and get polished some more. But I think that he is a quarterback. You know what I mean? I think he's a good quarterback. And I'd like to see him on the roster.
Well, if he's going up against one of these new rookies, I think he absolutely could compete. Because it's not like any of the guys coming out are necessarily going to be polished, right? Like, they're going to have bumps and bruises of their own.
And so,
now, granted, it's a first round pick, so they're going to want him to play, but
and that's what I think. That he's not going to be able to really compete against a first round pick, because the first round pick is going to have the inside track and then go.
Of course.
However, that may be one of the situations where, okay, you're holding a clipboard again for another year. You know, first round quarterbacks don't always play the full year because they get hurt, especially with the way that offensive line is set up. So
Yeah,
you may have your
exactly.
second chance to be able to go ahead and do your thing. He was doing well. Like I said, he didn't win the games. I think he won one game, truth of the matter, and he threw some interceptions and stuff like that. And there wasn't a lot of points being scored. But they dumbed down the offense, and they didn't have an offensive line. The guy was running for his life most of the time. So I mean, I think that, like I said, I feel like that there is a number of ways to go. Just keeping Eberflus is weird to me. That whole situation is weird.
That makes no sense to me. The fact that he has a job, the fact that Dennis Allen has a job, and guys like Vrabel and Belichick and Pete Carroll, they don't. Like, we're in bizarro world. None of this makes sense. You're talking about first ballot Hall of Fame type coaches in Belichick and Carroll, and you got Eberflus, who, this thing was a dumpster fire all year, and somehow he's keeping the job. Just bizarre. It's bizarre.
Right. Moving on, because I'm tired of talking about Chicago. We talk about them too much, and we got more to talk about with them as they get closer and closer to the draft.
Of course.
Dozens of fans treated for hyperthermia during the Dolphins and Chiefs game.
Of course.
Go figure. Go figure. The one guy, there's a couple guys out there with no shirts on.
Yeah, because what are you doing? Like,
Yeah, well, you know what? So, again, they probably had Vaseline on. I won't lie. They probably did.
Vaseline isn't going to heat you up at -20.
No, it's not, but it will keep the wind off.
Sure.
It will keep
sure.
the wind off. It makes it not windy, which
Okay,
solves
so-
a lot of problems. It does
So
solve
say
a lot
it's
of
not
problems.
-20, it's only -7.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And you're moving, you're drunk and stuff like that. I get it. Like, listen,
Sure.
whatever. I got to imagine that the guys with the shirts off were not any of those fans.
Probably true.
Ones-
Yeah, because
they moved. They didn't stop moving the entire time.
Exactly.
Like, I'm not that guy. I get cold, but I've got a buddy of mine who's got all the tattoos on his body.
Yep.
I've touched his. I've touched him after a game where it's cold. You know what? His skin is cold. He just knows how to unlock that part of his brain where cold is just a feeling, and I don't feel it.
Yeah.
I just don't feel cold. It's just like those guys get into ice baths.
Yep.
I don't know if I'm interested in trying to do that even a little bit, but they do it and such like that. But I got to imagine those guys are fine. It's everybody else who was sitting there shivering and had tons of blankets on them and still wound up with hyperthermia.
Sure.
So, but dozens. I'm surprised we're not hearing about that in Buffalo. That we're only hearing about the Kansas City game.
Yeah.
And Buffalo, they sat on piles of snow.
Yep.
But Rams Higbee had an ACL tear.
Yeah.
It was confirmed ACL tear. He's going to be out for over a year.
Yeah. I mean, you knew that happened. I mean, as soon as you saw his leg bend to the side like that, you're like, that's a wrap. It's unfortunate because of how big the emphasis is on not going high because they want to reduce the risk of concussions and everything. I mean, that's the hit you got, right? I mean, there's only so much surface area that you can hit. And if you can't go high, you kind of have to go low, right? Like, you can hit them in the middle, but you hit someone in the middle, they do have the ability to shake off of that. So if you take the legs out, you tackle them, you go high enough, wherever the head goes, the body follows. But if you hit somebody mid center mass, they can bounce off you. So, I mean, you're going to see a lot of these types of injuries because you're limited on how it is you can even tackle anymore. And unfortunately, a low tackle, I don't love it, but I mean, you get why they happen. I mean, you got to get the guy on the ground. And obviously you're not trying to hurt anybody, but I mean, they're dictating where you can hit at this point. And anything that's even remotely up here, and if your head moves to the side and glances their helmet, it's a 15-yarder and a first down. I mean, you're trying to avoid that as much as you can. So as much as I hate to see these injuries, we're going to see more of them.
Well, it's interesting because I got to imagine that there should be somebody out there. When I say somebody, I mean some type of corporation or company that is working on protective equipment for the legs, similar to the helmet. I'm not calling like a bubble wrap for the knee, but kind of. Like there should be some type of equipment that is used because obviously ACL tears are going to happen. And they're going to happen either way. They may happen. They may happen like, hey, my foot gets caught a little bit, and that's what tears the ACL or
Absolutely.
whatever, what have you. But on hits, you're right. I agree with you. You got to go. They want you to go center mass. They're trying to have you always go for the hips, but
Yep.
you don't do the hips. You know what I mean? Sometimes you got to get the foot. You do the alligator tackle where you're
For
spinning
sure.
and stuff like that. All those types of things. Or you could just do it the Eagles way and just try to arm tackle and not tackle at all. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, just
that
overrun the guy altogether and
yeah,
high
just
five
try to
him on
grab
the way
him
through.
and smack his shoulder pads a little bit and hope he goes down.
Pretty
Um,
much.
there was a lot of that in that past game.
So
So,
much.
but you got to think that there are some companies out there that are starting to do that. I mean, I don't know that you need to wear the full brace. Those braces are a pain in the ass. You know what I mean? That when you're wearing them, I know that I've seen them with the
Yeah.
arm braces. I've seen them with the knee braces. Maybe that's what it is. It should be already incorporated into the uniform.
Well, I mean, the thing is just like anything else, you get a sideways hit like that, it's going to be whatever is the easiest thing to move, right? So if you have a brace there, then all of a sudden it could be the brace against the muscle. So then all of a sudden, yeah, maybe you don't tear your ACL, but you potentially break your femur because that's where the brace ends. So, I mean, because like that dude hit him square in the side of the knee, right? So a brace there, yeah, so maybe the brace doesn't allow you to tweak the knee, but it could potentially break your leg because the foot still didn't move. So, I don't know that there's necessarily a right answer there, other than, you want the guys to go high, but you can't always do that. I mean, if you're diving at a guy, you're hitting him wherever the end of your dive was. So I don't know if there's really a fix, but I mean, I think at that point you're just potentially moving the injury, not necessarily eliminating it.
Like I said, I think that they should try to work on something because obviously ACL tears are a year. It takes a year to
Yeah.
get back from them. So it's now you've lost this guy for a year now, and that really it's not you've lost him really till for a full year because there ain't no way he's going to get back in time for what are you going to have him come back for the playoffs next year? Better hope you make it first.
Yeah, I mean, like best case scenario, he's going to come back mid-season, right? If he's ahead of schedule.
Yeah, if he was able to get it in 9 months, he would come
Yeah.
back in what, September, October, November, maybe.
Exactly.
And that's a lot. That's a lot to hope from somebody. You know what I mean? That's a lot of what ifs there. So,
Yeah, I mean, on the plus side, high-level athlete, they tend to heal a little faster. If he's really good about rehab and doesn't have any setbacks, stuff like that, I mean, you could do it. But yeah, you're asking a lot out of the guy, and you better have a plan ahead of him coming back because until he's back, you don't have him. And if you're trying to get him back in time for the playoffs, like you said, you got to make it first.
Yeah, well, hey, if I was this guy, if I was the player, I'd get the surgery, I'd head down to Costa Rica and get the stem cells. Get it starting to repair that way. Like that's you know what? Shoot my whole body full of stem cells. I got the money. You know what I mean?
Right.
Let my shoulder got a little crick in it. Get some in there. Get all in the knee. Let's do it. Let's get it all repaired. Throw some in my Achilles because I don't want them going bad either. Like I would do all of that stuff. Like just spend the money and do it because it's not illegal. It's not like doing steroids.
Yep.
Just go do it. Let's go do it. I mean, you could go say hello to Aaron Rodgers while he's down there because he's doing his ayahuasca. So, I mean, make it a whole big NFL event. Interestingly enough, as we're talking about different manufacturers, Mahomes' broken helmet did its job, said the manufacturer.
Did
You
it
know
now?
that yes, that so by doing that, obviously the give. So during those hits, these helmets are supposed to expand and contract a little bit so that the absorption happens from the actual plastic itself,
Of course.
and then it goes down to that second layer of the padding that goes towards the head, so that the head is protected. So in that type of weather, the contraction happened, it cracked and broke the helmet.
Yeah.
So it did its job. It did its job because
Of course.
if not, it wouldn't have moved at all, and it could have given him a concussion. So
Sure.
I appreciate the fact that these. I mean, they're spending a lot of money on these helmets. The
Yeah.
CTE stuff is a real thing. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
They don't want any more of these guys. The NFL sees the writing on the wall here. They know that they cannot continue the way they're going without going to robots. Robots' heads don't hurt. So
It's true.
ultimately, eventually, they're human beings. You have to look at them as human beings, even though they are implements in the battle that you are waging from owner to owner. It's
Yep.
still, yeah, they still are human bodies. So um, ultimately, the fact that it cracked like that was interesting to see.
Yeah.
I've heard now since then other stories of helmets that just cracked in half in the cold weather and stuff like that, just because it's the cold weather that's doing it. Yeah, I believe that the manufacturer saying it did its job. That's right, it did do its job. He was able to continue that game and keep on playing. So this is
Yeah.
interesting in that regard. Tomlin not going anywhere. Not
Walks
going
off the
anywhere.
stage. Walks off the stage. He did not appreciate that contract question. It's the first time I've seen him do that. Usually he's like, I'm not going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the game we just lost or whatever. But he was just like, nope, I'm out.
Yeah, I didn't see that, but Mike, you have a year left of the contract. That's what it was from Ian Rappaport, and he just
Mhm.
walked off the stage.
Yep.
Perfect. That's what I would have done. But he's going to finish out the year. So, oh, all right. Well, good for him. Like I said, I feel like if you have never gone under 500, you deserve to coach in this league.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the biggest question is, can they get him a quarterback? Because he doesn't have one, right? Pickett hasn't really shown to be the guy. Trubisky, we know, isn't. Rudolph, we know, isn't. So, I mean, you got three backup quarterbacks, essentially. You have a really good defense, and that helped win them some games this year. But, I mean, you're going to be looking at this same team if they can't figure out the quarterback situation.
So, yeah, I agree with that, and it's T.J. Watt not being there may have been a difference in that game. He may have been a big
Oh,
difference in that game
without a doubt.
because
Without a doubt he
uh,
was.
it wasn't like they were. I mean, they scored 14 points quickly, but you hold them to even a field goal in one of those, and you might actually have a much different game.
Well,
So
do you think Allen gets away for 52 yards with Watt in the middle? I don't.
no, no,
There's
not
no
at
way
all.
that happens. Watt is
Yeah.
way too athletic to allow that to happen.
Well, not
So,
only that, but you have to double and sometimes triple team him.
exactly.
And ultimately that means there's somebody else who's not got somebody on them. So
Yeah, no, I mean,
once you
that
go
game would
man
have
to
had a
man with
wildly
everybody,
different feel. What was that?
I agree. Yeah, once you have to go man to man on body on body, it's like, okay, we got everybody's covered. Guess what? He's got lanes to run because everybody's being blocked. You put
Exactly.
2 to 3 guys on Watt, now all of a sudden there's another body that's open.
Yep.
And that's really what he does to that defense. Along with the fact that he might be able to shake off that block and still disrupt.
True.
So that's the type of stuff that I do feel would have been a lot different in that game. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, after the first quarter, like, it was a tight game. They kind of punched back and forth the rest of the way. The box scores per quarter were almost identical the rest of the way. It was those first 14 points was the difference. So, yeah, I mean, if the defense was healthy, yeah, I think that would have been a very different game. I still think the
Yeah,
Bills would have won, but I think it would have been a different game.
makes me wonder, because if there was going to be a quarterback on the move, so if you're Pittsburgh, do
Mhm.
you take a small flyer on Fields?
Sure. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't need elite quarterback play, obviously, right? So, it gives Fields the ability to develop because they do have a okay offensive line, right? Which is something the Bears don't, and you'd be able to pick them up relatively cheap, right? Like I was postulating what, a second, a sixth, and a conditional second or third the following year based
Actually,
on.
I would say a conditional third.
Yeah, well, I
Like
was
you
thinking,
give up a fourth round, pick and say, listen, I'll give you a third if we get to the playoffs, which is likely. So you're really giving him a third round pick because Pittsburgh would really have to fall off to not make the playoffs. They make the playoffs every year, it seems.
yep,
And then a second if we get to the AFC championship, and
yep,
a number one if we make it to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. A
yeah,
win
no,
of the Super Bowl, two
and
for
as
the AFC championship, three for the playoffs.
yeah,
So
no,
a third round pick.
I could see that, some sort of escalator on the second pick. Absolutely.
And then like a sixth round pick to go with it.
Yeah.
Like a following year fourth round pick. So it would be it could possibly be two fourths, could be a second and a fourth, or a third and a fourth, or God forbid you win the Super Bowl, a first and a fourth.
Yeah. But then you have a ring, so who cares?
Exactly. So that's how I look at that, in that regards. I would think of that. I also think, as funny as this sounds, Dak. Dak
Yeah.
Prescott could also be in the mix in that situation. Don't ask me why I think that, but I think that Dak is going to get shopped around this year.
So, I mean, okay, so if we're looking at Dak, then why wouldn't you just go get Cousins? Because then you don't have to give anything up to go get him.
For the same reason why you don't want Cousins.
Yeah, but
Because he's a coach killer. He's a coach killer. I wouldn't trust the guy who kills coaches for the one guy who's been.
But if you're
He'd be
looking
the
at
reason why they go under 500. That's how I'd feel about that. I'd feel literally like this guy may keep us under 500 this year. If I get him, he's the coach killer. He's the coach killer.
Pittsburgh does play a lot in prime time. There is that.
So
I
wouldn't
mean,
do it.
Statistically, they're very similar though. So that's why I say that is like, okay, they have very similar stats. So do you go after the guy that isn't going to cost you anything to go get, or do you go after Dak?
And he's also 35 years old. He's also 35 years old.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Coming off of a significant injury.
Right.
Yeah, I mean there is that. There is that for sure. How old is Dak now? Is he 30?
I gotta imagine he's 29, 28, 29.
All right. Yeah, so you got some time left with him. Both of their postseason resumes are horrendous, so it may ultimately end the same. But
30 years old. He's 30.
30. Yeah.
Dak is 30 years old. So, yeah. I mean, I think that's also a potential possibility.
Well, I mean, so
we'll
based
see.
on that, do you make a play for Wilson then also? Because Denver is clearly moving off. They seem like they're probably going to pay a lot of that salary just to get him out of the house. Do you go get a guy like Russell Wilson?
Too much money. And again, I don't like Wilson.
You may be able to make. Well, I mean, there is always that part, but I mean, you may be able to make Denver pay a bunch of it because they just seem like they're over it and want him out of the room. Similar to the Carson Wentz thing, where they're just like, you know what, we're going to pay you all this money to just go anywhere else.
Yeah, but you can't drop him like that. You'd have to there's no way. There's nothing that has happened in the NFL that says, hey, you're going to eat the contract. This isn't hockey where hockey eats the contract, and you put the money on your cap rather on their cap. It's that doesn't happen in the NFL. So
Yep.
I don't know if it can happen in the NFL.
Well,
You know
the
what I
other
mean?
team wouldn't. Whoever's paying him is who eats the cap. So, like when the Eagles did it, it hit their cap. Wentz was
Right.
gone; he got money, but it hit the Eagles' cap. So,
Right.
no matter how this goes down, Denver gets that cap hit. It's just how badly do they want him out of the room, and it seems pretty bad. It seems like they want him gone. Now, obviously, I'm not in there. That's speculation. So,
Yeah, just think about all the parking spaces that they'll gain and that extra office that they'll grab. It's all of a sudden things would be a lot better for them over there in Denver. They'll have all that extra space, that they could reacquire.
I mean, they already
Yeah,
get rid of his office.
thinking about any other quarterback that could possibly be on the move. I don't know of any that really strike me as like everybody got quarterback happy last year, so they all like really signed in and did all that stuff. The only other name that could probably go after or not is Garoppolo. I mean, he
He's too
fell off the face
fragile,
of the
man.
earth.
Yeah, they weren't going to let him play again because they want to be able to move him. But I mean, he just always gets hurt. So I don't know how you bring him in. I don't know how he's anything more than a backup at this point, because every time he's been a starter, he's left. And it's that old adage: your best ability is availability, and he just hasn't had that.
Right. No, I get it. And then lastly, since we'll get off of Pittsburgh before we get to the top of the hour, the Seahawks general manager says an important requirement for the next franchise's head coach is to keep the culture in place. That the next coach must keep a positive culture. Is there a
Sure.
positive culture in Seattle?
There is. So, I mean, Pete is an
I was looking for you to
energetic-
expand. Like, sure. All right, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, Pete was as energetic of a guy as he could be, right? And he brought that like always compete mentality. So like it was actually a very electric atmosphere around the team, and that's part of the culture that Pete and John put together. So would Schneider want that to remain? Of course. Is that realistic? I don't know. Depends on who they bring in, because some people really just don't operate in that way. Some people coach in a very heavy-handed way, which wouldn't really fit very well. Especially if they went after a guy like say they bring in like a Sean Payton kind of guy who is every bit I'm the guy, right? So I don't know. We'll see. They have a pretty wide list of people they're going to bring in. So it looks like they're going to take their time finding that right person.
Well, as they should. Again, this goes back to the old adage that I will use from a guy I used to work for who did teach me a few things. I wasn't the biggest fan of him personally, but he was a very smart businessman, and who said, "You hire slow, you fire fast." So
Absolutely.
hiring slow is almost a necessity. You want to be able to find out, do your due diligence, see if this person's really going to be the person that you want to hear to be the one leading your franchise. And that's
Well, not
there's
just that. Well, not just that, because this is a scenario where you forced out a Hall of Fame coach. Your next move determines whether or not you get fired, right? Because now it's John Schneider at the reins, making these decisions, making these coaching decisions. You pick a bust next time through, that contract's not renewed.
Even when you have the guy who at the helm right next to you now, he's like, hey, I'm going to help you. I'm going to be assistant GM, just advisor to the team type guy. And
so even in the press conference that came out yesterday from Schneider, they still don't know what Carroll's going to do. Like, they have no idea what his job is. I think that they are moving him up front less to be a true advisor and more because they got to pay him anyway, right? Coaches' contracts are guaranteed, so they're paying him regardless. And so they're leaning more into we don't want you to coach our team, but we don't want you to coach against us either. So we're going to hold the cards, take you off the market, because you're not going to just out and out quit and forego the money we already owe you. So they move him up front. He still doesn't have a clear path of what it is he's going to do within the organization, other than he's not going to have any real say of anything. You know, he's that movie executive producer. You're on the credits, but you didn't do anything. So that kind of looks like the role they're giving him. Do I think that he has an inside track to John's ear? Sure. Right. Absolutely. Why would they've been together for 14 years. You would think that he's going to take anything Pete Carroll says under advisement. But at the end of the day, this solidly falls on John Schneider as far as selecting this next coach. And, you know, if you force out a Hall of Famer that's routinely got to the playoffs and you bring in a guy that messes up the culture, wildly underproduces with a roster that is pretty good, yeah, I mean, that can get a GM fired real quick.
well, yeah, I hear that. But there again, it's all going to be hit or miss. I mean, somebody may come in here and be like, okay, but the roster isn't that good. You know, it's like your roster is getting aging. You know, his age is going to catch up to it some. I feel like Pete Carroll did amazing with that team last year to make the playoffs. Yeah. This year, I feel like he was probably where he should have been last year.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely underperformed, and some of it was because of that offensive line being so banged up. But at the end of the day, like, there were games that they let get away, and it was on the defensive side of the ball that was the problem. And, there were 3 games that were very winnable games that when you look back on the season, you're like, oh, yeah, I mean, any one of those games could have been the difference.
Right. So it'll be interesting to see. It's definitely going to be an interesting off season with the coaching carousel. Obviously, there's only 8 right now. Still only 8. Obviously, we didn't hear about McCarthy. We didn't hear about Sirianni. So, and I don't think
Allen's still in there. They got Dennis Allen somehow still in there. They did get rid of his OC.
Right.
But and a quarterback's coach. But so far, Dennis Allen's still in there. We'll see if that holds serve the rest of the way. But the Seahawks situation, that one's going to be interesting, mostly because I'm a Hawks fan. So I'm sitting here viewing it 2 different ways. Like, in one way, I'm viewing it as a fan, and the other way, I'm viewing it as an analyst. And I view them very different ways. So
right.
It's
you want certain things because this is your favorite team. You have to report on it because you're supposed to be unbiased at that point.
Exactly.
Exactly. I don't report on things unbiasedly. I am definitely biased when I do my reporting, especially to my team. Not that I'm unbiased to the other. I am unbiased to the other teams. You know what I mean? Because I just want my team to win all the time. And
no, of course,
sometimes they do not.
Fair.
Like this weekend, we did not. We did not do it this weekend. Go figure. But in the meantime, we are at the top of the hour. We're going to go for our station identification break. So we will be back in just about 2 minutes. McLovin should be joining us any second now, so he'll be there with us for the second hour. So stay tuned for the second hour of Coast to Coast. I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face.
Oh, I'm from Brooklyn.
Hey, guys, any?
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Supporting the needs of our veterans. That's the goal of all of us at Team AmVets. Like Mitch, Carlos, and Kevin from our Welcome Home team that brings furniture to our vets.
We are Team AmVets.
Or Linda from our thrift stores who brings you great bargains every day.
I am Team AmVets.
And John, who picks up your thrift store donations that support California veterans programs.
I am Team AmVets.
Visit our website or Team AmVets thrift store to donate or shop today.
Join the team!
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
And we are back with our second hour of Coast to Coast. And in this hour, obviously, McLovin's not here yet. So we're going to start without him. I'm sure he'll show up here momentarily. Real quickly, just starting with your team, the Seahawks. This offseason, obviously, first thing first is going to be a coach. Ultimately, what do you think are some of the positions that absolutely need upgraded for your team that they need to really address in the draft or in free agency?
Yeah, I mean, the couple of position groups that are glaring holes is defensive line and linebackers. So it's something, it was a problem last year. It was a problem this year. And the biggest thing is they can't stop the run. They don't have any meat in the middle, right? So they just have guys that, for whatever reason, can't seem to get off blocks, don't necessarily have the best pass rush. Our linebackers have a really tough time in coverage. So if you're running against Seattle, if you're running up the middle, you're going to get yards. If you're doing seam routes, crossing routes, little digs, stuff like that, they're open all day. They have a great secondary. You know, they got two guys that were in the conversations for rookies of the year in consecutive years, Pro Bowlers, whatever. But the linebackers can't stick with receivers. And so those plays, especially to tight ends, are open all day. So, I mean, they desperately need to shore up that side of the ball. Because when you look at the offense, the offensive line last year did well. This year they were banged up, so obviously they weren't good. But if your guys aren't on the field, obviously they're not going to be very good, right? So, but you have a trio of receivers that are good. You got good tight ends. You got two good running backs. So if you get, the offensive line play that they had last year, offensive side of the ball is pretty solid. Right. Even with Geno there, say you leave Geno there, offensive side of the ball is solid. Even with how banged up they were a top 10 offense scoring wise. So, I mean, they can move the ball. The defense, unfortunately, couldn't stop anything. And there was a huge tackling issue. So there's real questions on Tariq Woolen, right? Last year, he was the runner up to Sauce for defensive rookie of the year. And this year he got benched twice for not being able to tackle, which is a huge concern because as a defensive player, there, it seems like, I could be wrong, you can correct me, but if you're on defense, tackling is kind of important.
Yeah, as we learned in this last game with the Eagles and the Buccaneers, the Eagles could not seem to tackle anybody, and that usually what happens is that the other team will score.
Yeah. I mean, it ranks high in the things you should be able to do. So, so that is a bit of a concern. But I think the biggest thing for the Hawks moving forward is defensive line, especially pass rush, and some linebackers that can do something in coverage. And as much as I love Bobby Wagner, he's not a great coverage guy. Like, he'll make all the tackles, but he's not going to defend a pass, right? Like, that, he's not generally in position to do that. He'll make the play. He's one of the most sure tacklers in the league, but he needs some help around him in guys that can disrupt a pass play or at least hang with a tight end, right? They don't necessarily need to get out there and make interceptions or anything like that, because usually if you have a linebacker that's that size, they're probably not going to be very good at run stopping, right? Because they're going to be a little bit undersized for that. But if you can get a guy that, can at least get out there and make the play, right? That's the key. So those are the two position groups that I'm really looking for some significant growth in.
So I got a question for you. Now, you were an offensive guy, right?
No, I played defense. I was a corner.
You were a cornerback.
Yeah.
So let me ask this. Is just because you played professionally, I'm asking this, and you may not even be able to give me a real good answer on it, but my thought is that if you're a defensive guy,
yeah,
for the most part, you're not playing offense. You're always going to be defense. If you're an offensive guy, are you stuck on the offensive side of the ball, or would you be able to transition to defense?
So I transitioned.
Ridiculous.
So I transitioned to defense. So I originally was a receiver. I just, through high school, I was a wide receiver. The problem was we had really bad quarterbacks, and you could still hit people across the middle back then. And our quarterbacks would hang you out to dry. Like, you would get murdered across the middle of the field. And so that's where I decided, instead of being hit, I wanted to deliver the hit. And that's really where I made the transition to the defensive side of the ball. Just because I like to hit more than be hit. And so had a lot of fun on that side of the ball. But yeah, you can make the transition. You can go either way because it's a similar skill set, right? Being able to.
Here's the reason why I ask. Here's the reason why I ask. There seems to be an abundance of tight ends that don't make it into the NFL, and they want to go in as tight end. How tough is it to have a tight end become a middle linebacker or an inside or outside linebacker? I mean, outside linebacker, I look at that as like defensive end. So I feel like you need to have more of the skill set of a defensive end to be an outside linebacker. But to be an inside linebacker or a middle linebacker, I feel like a tight end should be somebody who you could transition easily enough.
That would be a tough transition from tight end to middle line. Yeah, no, that would be a really tough transition. So that would be to give you a opposite perspective. That would be like saying you wanted an outside linebacker to now be the quarterback, because your middle linebacker calls out the defense, changes defensive calls. Like, he is the defensive quarterback. So he runs the defensive play. So you're asking for a wildly different skill set. Plus, you're talking about a guy that has to be in coverage. He has to be able to rush. He has to be able to run, stop. It's a tough position. It's a tough position. So if he were to go from tight end to like outside linebacker, I could see that, because you're going to be, your coverage calls are going to be dictated to you. You're going to have an idea where it is you need to be. That middle linebacker has a really expansive job on the field.
But outside linebacker is, and the only reason why I'm saying this is because the coverage portion of the linebacker's position is kind of what gets me. It's like I feel like a tight end is big enough to cover other tight ends. You know what I mean? And now they may not have the skill set of tackling.
Sure.
Seemed like neither did anybody on our defense either. So
a lot of those guys don't have the desire to go hit.
That's a big deal. Like that. See, that's why I couldn't have Zach Ertz be my middle linebacker or outside linebacker, because he couldn't block either. You know what I mean? So like if a guy can't block, he's obviously not looking to get engaged. You know, as a player, like he's obviously going to get tackled or whatever. But
it's a different mentality. It's a different mentality. Like you got to want to hit, because the hits, you know, some of them hurt. Like they are not all pleasant hits. Like there were plenty of times you take your pads off and you have the spider web bruises, you know, from hitting people. And I mean, you're either built to go hit somebody or you're not. Like for me, I always had a lot of nervous energy going into a game. Didn't matter how many I played. I always had a lot of nervous energy walking on the field. And so I would play any kind of special teams I could get on. I needed the first hit. Like I had to go down. Like, so I love being on kickoff, because it didn't even matter who you hit. You sprint down the field and you blast somebody. And that got me right for the game. Like then I'm like, okay, here we go. Because until then I kind of was like, you know, just again, nervous energy. Didn't matter how many, you're just amped up to be in there. So you're just like, all right, here we go, let's go. And so as soon as you got to run down and, you know, put your helmet on somebody, you're just like, all right, now I'm ready for the game. And so whether we were kicking off or kickoff return, you know, on kickoff, obviously I was a gunner. On return, I'd be like, you know, a second row guy, so that I could cross the field and like, you know, blow someone up, because, you know, blind sides were still okay. So, you know, but I needed that hit to start the game, because otherwise I just wasn't quite right for the first series. So I had to get that first hit in. But that's a mentality thing. Like you're either there to hit somebody or you're not.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I played defense mostly because I didn't mind hitting somebody. Although they had me, you know, when I was playing, they had me on offense too, because I could catch the ball. You know what I mean? I kind of did both ways on that side. It just, truth of the matter is that I was probably better suited for defense than I was on offense. Because I wasn't super, super fast, but I had great closing speed and I could read where the ball was going to go. So that made things a little different in terms of that, which made me more of the free safety, you know, strong safety type, somebody who could, you know, the back guy. But
yeah,
there we go. We got McLovin finally showed up.
Therapy runs over, man, when you're a Cowboys fan. Not kidding.
You're not kidding. That's
we know. We know. That's a real statement.
Therapy runs over, man. How you fellas doing today?
Good. How about
doing
you?
Pretty well. We're discussing what our teams could use going into next year, and then I asked about position, taking a position player in one position with the potential of moving him to another position is kind of where you caught us in this conversation here. So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. God, I mean, I think you guys know what the Cowboys could use. I mean, setting aside the obvious, which is Dak. Okay, put him off to the side. Then you got to realize Tony Pollard is good, but we still need that Thunder side of it, which we clearly, Deuce Vaughn, we didn't see a lot of him. You know, then you got Dwiddle or Dowdle, however you say that guy's name. You know, he really wasn't too impressive. So we still don't have that guy that's complementary to Pollard to really take some of the load off of Pollard. So clearly running back, quarterback. And then you got the issue of Tyrone Smith, who's 33 and pretty much has only had 30 appearances in the last 3 or 4 years. So he's obviously an injury-prone guy. Then you got Tyler Smith, who is, by all intents, could switch over to the tackle, but we still got that spot open. So we desperately need some offensive linemen for sure.
Hey, what's the trade package that you guys want to get Jerry Jones out of the building?
I would give it the whole damn team and start from scratch if I thought that you know, could possibly happen. Literally. No, seriously. And the thing about it is, you know, if we got rid of Jerry and actually got a physical ownership group, GM, coach, the whole night, the right people in the building, if I start from scratch, I probably got a chance to get to the Super Bowl much quicker than the current trajectory that I've been on for the last 3 decades. So I would literally scrap the whole damn team, go to the bottom of the barrel, give me a new ownership group, coach, and let's just build up. And I'm good with that. Hell, there's a new expansion team. I don't care.
Yeah,
because the trajectory we've been on for 3 decades hasn't worked. So, when you ask what we need, I mean, clearly Jerry Jones is the first thing that we need to get rid of, but I can't do nothing about that. If you ask me for what the team needs, clearly offensive line needs a little bit of help, running back, quarterback. I mean, those are issues, right? Defense, with the exception of our coordinator and game planning, really is a damn good defense. But we just need better game planning and getting these guys ready. That's all we need on that end of the stick, truthfully.
I figured.
So giving up 47 points. So 47 points in a game, giving up 47 points is good defense.
No, you're not listening. See, this is what happened with Pag. See, because Pag only get like 1 segment of that whole conversation. I said it was, and look, if you know the Cowboys defense, we got the defense. It was game planning. Why are we 5-10 yards off the receiver? I mean, it's all about game plan, defensive coordinator, head coach, and getting that defense ready, right? I mean, come on now. Pags, do better. Do better, Pags.
I figured I'd throw a road flare in a gas can right here, so.
So that being said, you're not going to be getting rid of Jones.
No.
That ain't going to happen.
What is it that you want to? Obviously, you mentioned the running back position.
Absolutely.
Is that it? What else? What else do you feel like you?
No. I'm saying obviously we need offensive lineman help. I mean, like I said, Tyrone Smith, not always there. Tyler Smith, you can slide him over. Bo Valdez. I'm not really. There's a couple of two. I would say 2 offensive linemen that I think need to go. Tyrone Smith being one because he's just even though he's a great offensive lineman, he's going to command a big contract. I don't think he should get it, but he's going to command it. So offensive line clearly has some issues. Tight end we're good on. Don't worry about tight end, but definitely we need a bigger goal line carrying back or a change of pace back to help out Pollard. Because if you watch Pollard go through the whole season, he can't even stay healthy. There's been numerous times where he's gone down with injury because I don't think he can handle a full workload. I don't think his body can handle a full workload.
I mean, to be fair, there's not a lot of running backs that make it through the whole season.
No, you're right. There's not.
That is a grueling position that even when you don't get the ball, you're getting beat up. I mean, when you look at CMC, this is one of the only years he made it through the whole season. And when you look at, even some of the premier backs, I mean, they make it through a season and then their next 3 will be, injury laden. And then, they'll have another random season where they're relatively healthy through it. So, I mean, it's not unique to the Cowboys.
CMC was limping in the playoffs. They were talking about it earlier. They were saying, CMC, if thank God they had the extra week of rest to give his body time. I mean, even he was kind of limping in. The only two tandems I've seen that actually work is Pittsburgh with Najee Harris and Warren, and then I like Mostert and Ashney over there at Miami. I think Kareem Hunt and Ford did a pretty deep, and I think Montgomery and Gibbs have shown that they can do that. There's a few teams out there that have gotten it, but by and far, as you said, it just hasn't.
That's because they have
Eckler. How many times has Eckler been hurt? Yeah.
No, exactly. And it's because they have a tandem that it works. So you're not carrying the load because if any one of those teams had one guy taking every snap, it's a tough position to then look at as a durability issue because it's like, man, you just get beat up constantly.
Well, it also seems like the running back position itself has gotten smaller, which I think is why they have a hard time handling the load. I mean, the days of, Jerome Bettis or Emmett or Barry or Peterson or LaDainian Tomlinson, Priest Holmes. I mean, the list goes on. That type of bigger running back that can handle kind of loads like that, we're smaller and faster nowadays.
Well, they also don't have a fullback plowing the road for them either.
Well, that's true. You're right. They don't. Well, hell, Emmett, he had Johnson, so I can't say that. But, yeah, I understand what your point is. Yeah, I get your point. Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, even when you look back to, guys like Sean Alexander, right? He had Max Strong in front of him. dude's a stud. Like,
remember back when Mike Allstott was there, and what's his face was running behind him, Tiki Barber. Not Tiki Barber, but jeez, I can't remember that dude's name offhand. But anyway, the days of Mike Allstott. I mean, that Mike Allstott was just a bulldozer. I mean, that dude was just north south. Get out of my way. And whoever was running behind him.
When you have a running back with a neck roll, you know you're about to get hit.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, that's how. Or the days of Moose Johnson for the Cowboys with Emmett. I mean, he did great things with Emmett.
Well, but that's the thing is you had a bulldozer in front, right? I mean, they're essentially like a D end that can run the ball that is ahead, right? So I mean, you have this premier blocker with speed in front of your halfbacks, right? And that position has gone away. So now your halfbacks are getting hit by these linemen that usually they didn't get hit by, before because they had the fullback to take on that block and it was a linebacker coming up. Well, yeah, if you're a 220-pound halfback and you're getting blasted by a 6'5" Samoan guy that's 365, yeah, you do that all game, you're probably not going to be in the best shape at the end.
That's why you're going to have a quick first step.
Yeah, you're real quick.
Well, and even these offensive linemen nowadays, I mean, they're fast.
They're running
I mean, these guys are running much, much faster these days,
Yeah, some of them DNs are a 4.5, monster of a human. You got interior linemen running a 4.9 or a 5.1. You're just like, man, those collisions are no joke.
And now you get these hybrids like T.J. Watt and Micah Parsons types or the Bosa types, which are leaner, quicker, faster, and they can get to you as soon as you even get the ball in their cradle. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, they're just shy of sharing that handoff.
Hey, you're not lying, though. I mean, it's true. And, if you watch that, there's been quite a few games. Even in the Tampa game, they were talking about Philadelphia just not being able – there was several times when Philly got to the damn ball carrier but couldn't wrap up. Tackling was a big issue. And I saw them talk about tackling on one of the sports shows later where they were talking about the NFL and tackling and angles of approach, has gone way down since back, in the earlier days.
No, the tackling thing is frustrating, especially as a defensive player. Like it's a fundamental. Like I don't like watching professional sports where fundamentals are terrible. Like what is the one thing you learn in any sport from when you start? It's fundamentals.
Oh yeah.
How do you get to the professional level and then just like abandon fundamentals? Like it doesn't make any sense. And it's probably one of the things that makes me as mad as you can possibly be about my team because during the Legion of Boom time, they actually released a video of how to tackle, right? Of like the proper way to tackle. So how, if we produced the video that was the league standard of how to tackle, why can't we tackle? Like that's right.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we didn't see the video. It's like you produced the thing. It's the same coaching staff. Like, what are we talking about? So yeah, it's frustrating. It's frustrating.
I mean, I can't tell you, and that over Wild Card Weekend, we really saw a lot of guys get on quarterbacks, but couldn't get them down, and the quarterback got away because it, like you said, they didn't have the fundamental. They weren't squaring up. They weren't getting, wrapping around with both arms. They weren't looking at the belly button to drive through the guy. They're, it's just they're trying to be flashy with it, whatever, and. It's not good tackling.
So that one I feel a little different about them not necessarily getting the tackle on the quarterback. And that is not necessarily a fundamental lack of fundamentals issue. That one is a league rules issue that I have a problem with because everything is at this point a roughing the passer call.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can't even breathe on that guy without getting it.
Exactly. So now as these guys are coming in on the approach, they're like second guessing themselves just coming in for the hit because if the guy lets go of the ball, that's a 15-yarder first down immediately, right? And so those guys are kind of half checking up before they get there because the guy, the quarterback could dump the ball. And so even as they're approaching, they're already kind of like pulling off. They're like, do I tackle him? Do I kind of lean off? Like, what do I do? So I feel really bad for guys.
And the NFL created that environment, honestly, right? I mean, I get it because when you're going full steam for a guy and he still has the ball, and then all of a sudden the ball's out of his hands, well, you just can't get rid of that full head of steam.
Exactly.
It's damn hard.
No,
And some of that stuff is so close, it's ridiculous.
Well, and that's why I give a little bit of lenience to poor fundamentals when it comes to tackling the quarterback, because they protect him so much, and the ball has to be out of his hand for like a half a second, and you're going to get lit up with a penalty. So if there was ever a position that I give some credence to having bad form, it's tackling the quarterback, because they are so wildly protected, and you're caught in between trying to make the play and not getting a 15-yarder unsportsmanlike and probably a $50,000 fine for what should be a normal football play.
Yeah.
Sorry, I caught the back end of that. There was a phone call I absolutely had to take.
Oh, no, you're good.
Anyways.
Yeah.
That being said, so it doesn't matter so I assume that really what you were saying was that it doesn't matter who the Cowboys take this year, they're still going to suck next year.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in all honesty, and that's what I'm trying to tell you. I don't really get my hopes up, because it is. Look, when everything around you changes except the root, you can change all the symptoms of why the team fell, but if you don't change the root of the failure, then you're just doomed to repeat it. And that's all we're doing is repeat. And Jerry Jones is the root of it all. And until we get rid of Jerry, I always tell myself it's just be more of the same. I don't care who you plug in at the head coach level, unless it's just somebody completely different than what Jerry has typically hired, right? So if he goes out and gets a Mike Tomlin, or if he goes out and gets like a Dable guy or Campbell or D'Amico Ryan, any one of those kinds of guys, Harbaugh, whatever, unless you're getting somebody completely different than Jones, then you're just going to get, just more of the regurgitated stuff from the last three decades.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there you have it.
That's why I'm in therapy.
Yeah.
I mean, more Cowboys fans should be. It saves so many TVs.
I love that when a girl was kicking the TV and it wasn't busted, and then it has the cowboy guy giving up his debit card. Oh, I ain't gonna lie. Listen, I appreciate a good job. That was a damn good one. I ain't gonna lie.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's like,
it took a long time for me to figure out why, Black Friday deals were always a TV. It's like, how many TVs do you need? But then, when you think about Cowboys fans, you're like, oh, I mean, they actually kind of need a new TV every year.
I love the flags.
That's why I got one TV and it doesn't get busted. My wife told me about it, so I just lay it down the wall.
It's got a protective box around it.
No, she just stands in front of it and says, "Go ahead if you want to." I said,
There you go. There you go. As far as the Eagles, I feel like that the Eagles are going to need. I feel like that we need a second back. That Gainwell did not have a very good season, and I didn't really look to him. I didn't think that he had a very good Super Bowl, and I felt that Super Bowl is what allowed him to stay here. Miles Sanders had a terrible year in Carolina. So, but I look at that as more because, well,
Carolina.
Yeah.
Yep. So I didn't get why you guys
Miles Sanders here. Good.
I didn't get why you guys didn't give Rashad Penny a bigger shot.
I don't know either. I
mean, he's a dynamic runner.
I think that they thought that he was going to be the next. Who did the Eagles have a couple of years ago? He was like the bruiser back.
It wasn't Bruce Staley, was it? It was
that's not the kind of runner he is.
But I think that's what they thought he was.
Oh, gotcha. I was going to say because he's a finesse back.
Yeah,
he's a wide body.
Yeah, he's thick, but he's a finesse back. Like he's not necessarily going to mow you down. Like if he can get an open hole, he can stretch the field. He's fast, but he's not super durable. So if you were picking him up as a bruiser, he wasn't going to be on your roster long anyway. But I was surprised that they didn't try and filter him in more because he is absolutely a dynamic back.
Got you. Well, I don't know why they didn't use him. I mean, obviously they brought him in here for the year. He stayed here the entire year. I think he got a whole 7 carries, maybe. If that. And ultimately, I got to imagine he's going to be somewhere else. So I think they may have taken a flyer on him just to see whatever, and they saw.
Was it just a 1-year deal? Was his just a 1-year deal? Okay, yeah,
correct. So why have him come back? But the Eagles are big on that. Like they had Jay Ajayi come back here for another year at one point, and they never used him. He's like, why do you guys have me here? Like, what's the purpose of me being here? I don't understand.
Yeah.
So I think the running backs, Swift did well. Swift had a good year running the football when they gave it to him. The offensive coordinator, I have to imagine, has got to change up some. I mean, they may stick with everybody, but I can't imagine that that's going to happen like that. I can't for the life of me believe that that's what's going to occur. You have to come up with
carries is not really a sample size big enough to test Rashad Penny on. I mean, 7 carries. I mean, I don't know. That to me, that's not enough.
No, it's not.
Like,
But I mean,
if
you're not going to use the guy, then what's the point, right?
And I'm pretty sure Rashad's thinking that too. Okay, I'll be out of here. I'll go find me another spot and try to catch on somewhere else, I would imagine. I mean, because he should be relatively healthy.
There is that. Yeah. No,
well, this year, obviously, and he's not used to being healthy after a full year. So.
No, exactly. That was the biggest thing, right? Is when he was with the Hawks, the offensive line wasn't very good. If he was able to get into the secondary, he was fine. If he had to take on the big guys, 5-6 games, and then he was hurt. Like it just kind of was what it was. They kept him through his whole rookie contract and everything, but I mean, he couldn't stay healthy. Now that doesn't make him unique in our lineup. We haven't had a running back make it the entire season since 2014. So it's not like that's anything new, but because of how fast he would get hurt, it made sense for them to move on. But yeah, I was really surprised the Eagles didn't use him more, especially in some of the scenarios where you guys really could have used a spark in the running game. And as fast as the guy is, give him a shot, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to think. I still can't figure out the one running back's name who was really. He said he was a bruiser back. That they got from Miami. Actually, they picked him up in Miami, and then
was it Miller? Was it Lamar Miller? Or?
No, not Miller. Oh my God, this is killing me here.
It's your team. You should know better, superfan.
Jordan Howard. There it is.
Oh, okay.
The name was escaping me. That was the problem. Jordan Howard was the man. And like I said, every time he was 6 foot, 224 pounds. Every time he ran through the line, he carried people.
Yeah.
Well, 6'4", I would imagine he would. That's a pretty big dude.
That's a big dude.
He's 6 foot, 224 pounds. So
that's like Derrick Henry's size, right? Oh, Derrick Henry would be a little taller than that.
6 foot.
What was Derrick Henry? Is he taller than that?
I think Derrick Henry's like 6'4" or 6'5" or something. Like,
yeah, he's a tall dude too.
He was human. Yeah. No, that dude is a tank.
Yeah, he really is
Derrick
a tank.
Henry is. How big is he? Let's see.
And again, that's somebody that's going to be on the market. If Dallas went and got him to pair up with Pollard,
6'3", 250.
Yeah, 6'3", 250. Again, that's that thunder and lightning that I would love to see them have. You don't have to get every down back.
If Derrick Henry wasn't necessarily the featured back anymore, it would extend his career for sure.
Oh, for sure, it would extend his career. And I mean, like I said, that would be perfect for what Dallas needs, perfect for what Pollard needs. I mean, we were doing good.
Imagine that split backfield, right? Like if you came out and split backs or offset eye or something like that with those two guys, man.
I'm just, I mean, I don't know what Derek's going to be looking for come contract time. So
true. Yeah.
He's 30 years
he's going to be
old.
looking to win a ring. I think Derek,
especially, because it really, except with the exception of Jonathan Taylor, everybody else has been settling for under $10 million a year, right? Hadn't they been around like $8 or $9 million? I think is what they're getting.
Yeah, all the running backs have been getting short sheeted as far as contracts over the last couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah, that's why they tried to do that whole thing where the NFLPA was trying to do something. They wound up getting sued by the NFL. Like, hey, listen, do not tell these running backs what to do. We control the market. You guys don't.
Yeah.
So,
well, and if you want to negotiate it, wait till the next contract's up, and then you can negotiate whatever you want.
Right. So, and that's ultimately you're going to see that a little bit. I think that's because you have some of these great running backs, but the problem is that you can't give, as the Cowboys found out, can't give all that money to a running back because then you ain't got no other pieces that you could put in place. So running backs are only as good. That's why you're going to see all these rookie contract running backs, and that's it.
Well, and that's also why you're seeing a lot more hybrid type backs that are good pass catchers that can be dynamic in the pass game because, the league's just moving away from the running game. And
just like Jahmyr Gibbs, pretty much it's a Jahmyr Gibbs style of running back they're going to. That's exactly what he is. He's a pass catching running back, flex.
Yeah, CMC is very similar, right?
Exactly. He's like the grandfather of it, if you guys are
absolutely. So it's really gravitating that direction, and then you're also ending up with some of those flex receivers like a Debo that can play in the running game, right? So they're kind of blurring the lines of what a running back is, and I think we're just going to see more of it as the rules continue to change to favor a passing offense.
Taysom Hill is a good example of that as well. I'll say they got quarterback, receiver, tight end, run. Everything but
he's listed as a tight end.
Yeah, but they use him everywhere else, though. He's all kinds of stuff.
The thing that'll be interesting is as this continues to shift, right? We've watched linebackers get smaller because they got to be able to keep up in the passing game, right? So then at some point, that's going to take over the league enough that a team's going to come out with the next Derrick Henry monster, and no one's going to be big enough to actually stop him. And you're going to see some of these linebacker sizes come back into what we used to know them to be. Because otherwise you're just going to, set rushing titles because nobody can bring you down. They're going to have to dive at the feet and hope you trip over them.
There isn't, there's no, Lawrence Taylors or Ray Lewis types. Those, like you said, those are kind of fade down. Like you said, more to where you see the Watt or Michael Parsons style, slender and quick.
Yep.
Right. Guys that are 6'2" plus 270, 260, 270 and can run 4.4 40s.
Yeah.
4.5 40s. Yep. That's kind of what you need to be able to cover these guys. And that's the hard part with that. The Fridge isn't who I was thinking of. I was thinking more of Christian Okoye. Okay. Imagine if he actually had some speed. He didn't have speed. He was like a 4.6 40 runner. If he was a 4.5 40 or a 4.4 40 runner, that guy would have broken every. And that's kind of what we're talking about. A running back who would be able to bust through these lines. For instance, I saw something that another rugby player, Australian rules football, went into the international portal. They're going to train him how to play football and be able to.
I saw that.
And so he is a running back style. That would be a running back. But imagine Jordan Mailata, at 6'6", 345, 350 pounds running the football at you.
Yeah.
He did have speed. He did carry people. He would have been able to do that. I think that something like that does have some credence. The problem is that when you're that big, you got a lot of people getting your hands on you. You're not.
No doubt.
The reason why the running back position has gone smaller is because you get lost in a bunch of big guys.
Yeah. And then there's also a lot of injuries. When you get to that level, too, there are injuries that come into play as well.
Yeah.
You know. But still, I mean, that's a big boy running really quick.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of defenders, especially now since nobody likes to tackle, is definitely making a business decision coming square up on him.
Right. Exactly. Because are you going to get hurt? I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to try to. What am I going to shoestring tackle him? Am I going to jump on his back? He'll just carry me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's the shoestring. You're diving across the ankles and because you're not.
You're doing a whole lot of stuff.
You're not squaring up for sure. For sure.
Right, because you don't want to get blasted off the ball. I mean, think of how many times we've seen. I know I've seen it at least twice, and it probably has happened more than that, where he stiff-armed, pushed somebody out of the way, and that guy goes flying.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, you have that type of strength level, you're going to win. And that's what he is. He bullied his way to 1,000 yards this year, even. I don't even know that he was worth it to get 1,000 yards, but he did. He got 1,000 yards.
There's 17 games. 1,000 yards isn't as impressive as it used to be.
Well, with 16 games, it shouldn't have been as impressive as it used to be. So,
well, I mean, it wasn't though. I mean, when you had 14 games, 1,000 yards was that's an impressive stat. At 16,000 yards, you're like, yeah, I mean, you should probably kind of get there. 17 games, like, I should hope you can get there if you're the featured back.
What? So 1,200 should be the new 1,000 yards, is what you're saying?
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, right? Like, there's more games. Like, I mean, if you're changing the dynamic, the benchmark has to move, right? Like,
of course it does. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
It used to be that a 4,000-yard passing season was elite. It was amazing.
Now we're trying to get to like 6,000 or 5,000 or whatever.
Yeah. There's more games, right? You're putting up 200 to 300 yards a game. I mean, yeah, the goalpost moves. If it moves for everything else, it has to move there too.
Well, I mean, if you're doing 300 yards a game, 17 games is 5,100 yards.
Yeah.
That should be that's the benchmark, you would say? Because I don't know, did anybody even hit 5,000 yards passing this year?
Well, no, because half the league got
4,800.
Half the league got hurt. Like, how dynamic did you expect it to be? We had more backups start in the league this year than any time I can ever remember.
Yeah, there was a lot of damn injuries. Stroud went down, Burrow went down.
Yeah, Cousins. I mean, Rodgers in 3 seconds.
Yeah.
I mean,
who didn't go down? Dak Prescott. Did he get 5,000 yards?
That's true.
Has he ever gotten 5,000 yards?
I know
he got close. I mean, Dak got close, but he didn't eclipse that. No. Hell, he had 400 yards just on the wild card game by itself. But no, he didn't get to that level.
Yeah. So, but I mean, that's what I'm talking about. He made it through the season. Now, Jalen Hurts isn't as prolific a passer, so seeing him get to 5,000 yards would have been something to see. That would have been something to see. But
yeah, so Tua got the closest. He got 46. Jared Goff was at 45. Prescott was 45. Josh Allen's 43. So Jalen Hurts was he was way down the list. He was at 38.
Jalen Hurts. You know where he's from? Channelview. You know where Channelview is in my relation? Right up the road from me. He was like he played our rival school. He was in our rival school. Oh, Jalen Hurts. Now, if you know anything about Channelview, it's predominantly almost an all-white school. Now it's kind of getting more Hispanic, a little bit of black starting to move in there, but it's not a very prominent school. But the fact that he came out of Channelview is probably The only thing that's good that's ever come out of Channel View. Other than a bunch of hookers. But, yeah.
That's not very nice.
That's in the good list. That's in the good
No,
list.
that's true. Hey, listen, everybody that's Texas and North Shore Channel View, they all know that I'm speaking the truth.
I was just trying to get the benchmark for what good is. So hookers are the good. So he's a fuzz better than a hooker. Is that what we're doing?
It is what it is. It is what it is.
Never a dull moment here with McLovin. He's trying anything he can to throw shots. He's trying anything he can to throw shade because he knows his Cowboys are going to suck forever.
Yeah. You know what the sad thing is I honestly think the Eagles are on that same trajectory. I just, you got to give it time. You got to give it time. I mean, you have a better ownership group, but I'm just saying, ultimately, I don't know if you make it back to the Super Bowl. It could be a hot minute. It could be 20 years. You never know.
I'm honestly, it could be
like you guys. 30 years since you've been to an NFC Championship game.
Oh, I get
30 years.
Yeah.
Now,
that's what I'm saying. I could recognize my own.
No, all three of our teams look like they may not have a great next season.
I think the NFC will be I think it's going to be a rough. It's not going to be a good. I don't think it's going to be good. I mean, depends on what Philly does. Like I know Pags has said on the last show where he was saying, that this Philly team could look different. So if it looks different, we'll see how it goes. So I think you got to say the debate on the NFC East is out, right? I think there's a lot of questions that are going to have to be answered over the offseason to see what they come back with.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot of questions for your two teams. Obviously, who knows what's happening with the Giants? And then, so you think Washington does the go worst to first in the division?
It depends on who they bring in to be the coach of that team and guide that team.
It would be pretty crazy if they went worst to first, as bad as that roster looked this year and disjointed as everything was. For them to get a new owner, new GM, new coaching, a bunch of new players, if they were to pull that off, that'd be crazy.
I mean, it's no different than what Texas. I mean, Texas went from worst to being now they're still in the playoffs. So I mean, to say it can't happen. I mean, it can happen. It just if you get the right guy.
Sure.
To come in there and turn that team around. I think it's going to take them a little bit. I think they got a lot of issues to work out over there. But if you get the right coach in there, and depending on how this ownership group works with the new, but you can put it together. I think they had a better chance now than what they did under what's his face Snyder and his team.
Well, I mean, of course.
You know what I mean? So they got to get better at some point.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
notice I didn't put the Giants
remove all the cameras from all the cheerleaders' locker rooms. That was the first thing, first order of business from the ownership. It was like, hey, we got to take these cameras out finally.
I mean, they got to at least be high def. Those cameras got to be old,
right? Closed caption television on the cheerleaders' locker rooms.
They pull that old Revenge of the Nerds routine over there. Hey, if it worked for Revenge of the Nerds, it'll work for us.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. What a weird, just.
That is weird. It's all the way weird.
Like everything about that team was bizarre, and the more that came out, the more you're just like, wow.
Well,
yeah, and then he did the screw of the owners. That was the great. He's like, oh yeah, you want to mess with me? Here's what I got. Wapoosh.
Yep.
Well, hey, and now you got Dolan over there dealing with his issues that just came out. I mean, these owners of these professional teams, they're a little shady out there.
Hey,
well, they didn't become billionaires by following all the rules.
Well, ain't that the truth?
Let's you want to talk about it. I told it last year, was maybe 2 years ago, when I said that when Robert Kraft got caught down in Florida, doing that thing, that was high-end gamesmanship. That was ownership gamesmanship. That happened from the Miami guy. That's why that whole Miami thing happened with Tom Brady. They dropped all those lines too, and Miami wind up getting cost. It cost Miami something. Like, hey, you want to screw with me? I'll screw with you back. That's exactly what that was all about. Because you know how hard it is to have a raid come in at a very specific time? They had a police raid. Oh, it just so happened that the owner of the Patriots happened to be there. That ain't a coincidence. Not even a slight bit.
Somebody's dropping nuggets.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the owner of the Miami Dolphins, and then afterwards, what happened with that? You see, you want Tom Brady to go there? Tom Brady's going to retire, and then he's going to go to Miami? No. There's been some collusion here going on.
Yep.
Who do you think gave Robert Kraft all the info? Tom Brady. Yeah, so that was straight gamesmanship up on an elite level. Things that we never get to see that was going public. You got to imagine this happens everywhere.
Oh, you got to.
Yeah, these guys are playing on boards that we will never see.
Oh, of course.
Like these. Yeah, the chess games that they're playing up there are things that we will never see, and I'm sure it happens everywhere. Everywhere.
Yeah. Well, when you get big money together, big things happen. I told you there's a new world order. There's all this stuff out there that us normal labor guys,
Oh yeah.
We don't see it.
Nope. No. Yeah, we don't command enough zeros in the account.
Exactly. Not yet. Not until we get our new sponsor, which is hopefully Buffalo Wild Wings is still watching us, because we need that sponsor as quick as possible. If we want to add a few zeros to our bank account, Buffalo Wild Wings is the place to go.
Absolutely. And if we could get a coffee sponsor too, that'd be awesome. We have room for more than one sponsor.
Listen, we do coffee, we do wings. Yeah. We do everything but Philly's cheesesteaks.
That's a shame. Philly cheesesteaks are the best sandwich.
You hate on chili like that.
I can't do it. You probably can't. I try to. There's nothing against Philly, by the way. This is not against Philly. I just don't like cheese. I just have a thing about cheese. I can't do it.
What? Okay, I don't know if we can be friends like that.
I know, man. I've lost a lot of friends over that.
I mean, I've been trying to overlook the cowboy thing.
But this is the final straw.
But cheese? Come on, man.
I don't get me wrong. I like cheese, just not on my sandwiches. I can't do it. I tried, and I have tried, and I just can't do it. It's a mental thing.
Got ya.
No, that part's true. That part's different.
I told you I'm in therapy, Bo. One thing at a time.
That's the first thing you're working on is cheese.
There's a plethora of things, but yes, that's definitely in the mix.
Got to change the cheese. So,
priceless.
Anyways, we are at the top of the hour. We're going to end a few seconds early because I got a phone call that I have to kind of address as quickly as possible. But anyways, we will be back tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. We'll have McLovin for the full 2 hours. So we'll get to talk about how bad the Cowboys are going to suck next year, because I know he loves talking about that nonstop. It's
actually a 6-hour show tomorrow.
We go long. And Bo, your show is next?
Nope, not today. That's tomorrow and Friday. Today my show airs at 4.
At 4 o'clock. So come back to our Roku channel at 4 p.m. to watch Bo and see him do his pick show, which is going to be, all the favorites. So, anyways,
he won't be picking Philly. Won't be picking Dallas either, though.
Won't be picking Dallas either. So, yeah, all 3 of the teams that he could possibly pick from this show ain't being picked. So that's a definite.
That is true.
That is an absolute definite. In the meantime, everybody, thank you very much for hanging with us today, and we will see you tomorrow.